Well, if you've never heard the name Emma Pennell before, my goodness, you are about to. The pride of South River, Ontario, is a rising soprano star in the Canadian music scene. Recently awarded the RBC Emerging Artist Prize at a gala reception at the National Arts Centre. Emma is performing this month here at the Banff Centre for Arts and Creativity. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
No problem, my pleasure.
I would love to hear more about your story growing up in South River, Ontario, in an Indigenous context, an Indigenous family. How did opera first enter your life and your consciousness as a performer?
Sure. So I grew up in rural Northern Ontario, just outside of North Bay, and in this village called South River, as mentioned. And yeah, it's like population 1,000, which is pretty sick. Me and all my cousins really love each other there. And yeah, we grew up quite rural. We grew up about 45 minutes outside of South River, and just in pure rural country, off the grid, totally off the grid for the first while of my life. And we grew up in a cabin with no running water, no electricity, no TV, no internet, none of that stuff. And it was just like such a beautiful relationship that I developed with the land. So I'm very grateful for the way that I grew up, even though it was sort of out of necessity because my family had no money, but we made do with what we had. Yeah. And so to answer your question about where does opera come from?
Where does that fit into this story of yours?
Such a fabulous question. So I actually grew up listening to CBC Radio 1. Basically all we ever listened to out there in the woods, because we had a radio power, or like a battery powered radio. And we would sit and listen, and Saturday night at the opera would come on, and I absolutely thought it was the most boring thing I'd ever heard.
This story's going great so far.
Yeah, I know, I'm really selling it here.
You're really selling this connection that you have to this.
Yeah. And so we would listen to it, and I would sort of try to like make up my own like stories of like what they could possibly be singing about, because I had no idea.
What were those stories like? What sort of things were you creating?
Gosh, I had a better creativity. I had more creativity back then, and right now, off the top of my dome, I don't know if I could really tell you what they were about, but they were definitely creative, because we had to get pretty creative out there. But that's one thing in the multitudes of things that I would spend my time doing, along with playing Go Fish and Barbies and so doing chores.
Okay, it's a very unique life, and a very sort of atypical one when you think about the usual sort of opera education.
For sure.
The one where voice lessons at a young age, music lessons kind of throughout. At what point in your sort of artistic journey did you think, you know what, this music thing is something that I really want to make a go at?
Sure. So I started singing basically ever since I was a child. I just didn't sing classically. So my grandma is a country western fiddle player. She's completely self-taught.
Wow.
And she even used to make her own music notation for her students, like based on the strings on a violin, and she would like make her own like essentially like scores. Wow. It was very interesting. But yeah, so I basically grew up going around with my grandma and the family band, and it had my great-grandparents, my great-grandmother and my great-grandfather in it. And my great-grandmother, she played kind of keyboard, and my great-grandfather played steel guitar and country western fiddle, and my Uncle Dave played the double bass, and my grandfather played mixed percussion and harmonica and all that stuff, and my grandma was the fiddler, and she also was the singer. And so what a band. So she would pull us kids up, and me and my brother just spent a lot of time with my grandparents, but we also just learned at a really young age to respect music and to love music. And it sort of became, every time we would go around to these like fall fairs or these square dances, it was sort of like a huge event. And so when you're young and you're so isolated from the world, like these small town events become like your everything. That's your social environment. It's the way you connect with people. And so I always loved to sing from a young age. And my grandma would pull me up and she'd make me sing "You Are My Sunshine." And I would sing this one little song called "I'm a Lonely Little Petunia in an Onion Patch."
Wow.
And it would be like, "And all I do is sit and cry all day." It was really cute. And then, basically, I basically just grew up loving singing. And I would do it every once in a while at my grandma's shows all throughout my teen years.
Yeah.
And when I was 10, I did this singing competition at a fall fair called the Sundridge Fall Fair Idol. Very niche.
Sounds that way.
Very, very niche. And I won first place, and I was singing a song called "Don't Fence Me In."
What?
Really fun.
Boy, and very apropos given the sort of the thing that you are doing now with your artistry. You are not one to be defined by any sorts of limitations of genre or of interpretation, or indeed of the role that you play in the sort of opera sector writ large, which we can get into in a little bit. But maybe first, before we get into all that,
Sure.
all that country gospel and all that fiddling music that you were enjoying as a child, what do you think you take from that experience as a kid into your artistic practice today?
Sure. I think that it gave me like really good ears, first of all. I was always around music, and I also think it gave me like a really good sense of like connection with community, because when you're from like a small area and we're putting on these shows for people, it's people that it's not just random. Everybody there, you know them, you know their name, and they're so much more appreciative of what you're bringing to them. And so I feel like it really helped me as an artist to remember that the people in your audience are your community. And so I feel like that's sort of the thing that I bring into my artistic practice.
Yeah. This is not something that is removed where you, the performer, are sharing something with an audience with any sort of emotional detachment. Like, this is all very interconnected for you and very sort of holistic.
For sure.
When you have been going through your sort of more formalized training and you've been performing more and more, not just in Toronto where you've been pursuing that training, but across the country really, how have you noticed the sort of opera genre be responding to that sort of ethos that you have, this idea that this is all a community? In other words, what sorts of barriers do you see in opera that your approach, your unique perspective, has maybe helped to address or even to break down?
That's such a good question, Nolan, and I'm actually going to get deep into it.
Let's go.
Let's go deep. So I think a lot of the times where the opera world lives right now, especially in the year 2025, is online. And we're sort of the first generation of artists and opera singers where the world sort of has access to us 24/7.
Yeah.
And for me personally, because of where I come from, the way I look, the way I talk, I get a lot of backlash online. And I think it's because people can distance themselves from you. You know, they sort of live behind a screen and behind a keyboard, and they can sort of lose their empathy and lose that sense of like community. And a recording, it just doesn't do what being in the space live and feeling that energy does. Some people are able to feel it over the screen, but a lot of people can't. And so I think that me as a singer, when I bring myself, when I bring my culture and my body and my spirit into those spaces, people don't know how to respond to it. Because the way that I am is because of colonization, you know?
Yeah.
And people don't want to see it. They want to see you tucked away somewhere, out of sight, out of mind, because then they don't have to feel responsible. But when I'm on the stage in front of them and I can make sound like that and I can make art like that, they can't look away.
Right. It strikes me that the same sort of relationship that you were describing before, the one where you and the audience are very much a part of the same sort of ecosystem in a performance setting, where you are both responsible to each other because you know each other on some level, that absolutely does not exist when somebody can, as you say, like kind of hide you away in something, either to dismiss your culture, who you are, and put it into like a role or a box of some kind, or that they can, by not knowing who you are and by not engaging with what you're trying to offer, that they then feel that sort of license to make those hateful sorts of comments
For sure.
on the internet. What are some things that, I mean, you're obviously doing everything you can to address that by the sheer nature of your artistry. How does the opera industry writ large have to work and change in order to make that relationship that you're modeling part of that normal experience?
Whoa. So I think a lot of, I mean, this is with my limited knowledge of how opera companies function,
Sure.
but I think that I never see, or very, very rarely see, people that look like me, specifically, like when you see them, when you see people who look like me, who are diverse, who have big bodies, you see them sort of as the comic relief or as the mother.
Yeah.
Typically those are the roles, or as the villain. And it tells you a lot about how people think about you.
Yeah.
And that's really tough, and it sucks. And I think that people who are big specifically, and this is me talking about people who are big because I think I receive the most backlash about that. People who are big on this earth deserve love, have love,
Yeah.
and are full of love. And so some of the fat people in my life, and I use fat flippantly because it's my word, some of the fat people in my life are some of my very favorite people. They're incredibly funny and incredibly talented and big hearts and wonderful and beautiful and all of these things, a multitude of things. And to see ourselves represented as a character who can be loved is so important. Because there are lots of people who love us, who want to see us being loved. And we want to see ourselves being loved. And I think that is something that really matters to me as an artist. Because I think we've seen enough hate. And I think that in this culture, in this society, if the goal of like fitness culture or if the goal of like opera or the goal of whatever is to have like these perfect people, human beings that are perfect, you know, physically perfect, all of these things. If the goal is to erase fat people entirely from this world, from TV, from art, that's a really sad reality for me. And not just for me, I think it's a really sad reality for the world.
Period.
So that's how I like to look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're trying to erase those, if you're trying to achieve this quote unquote sort of perfect thing, you then also, it seems to me, you end up with something that's rather antiseptic and maybe rather boring.
It's so boring. It's so incredibly boring. You know, people are not perfect. And I think that's another one of my points here for like when you get the online hate, people expect you to be perfect. They want you to be Maria Callas. They want you to be Davina. They want you to be slim and beautiful and sound beautiful and never make a mistake and always make the right artistic decision. And that's impossible. It's impossible. It's not possible.
Yeah.
You can be close. There are some people who sing absolutely beautifully.
Yeah.
But that's not real. That's not
No.
reality. And if you want that, there's AI, and that sucks.
And it strikes me that the stories that we share are never about perfect people, and nobody's going to see somebody who's living a perfect life. And
They want to see real.
They want to see real. They want to see real. You have received love of a different form recently, in the form of that RBC Emerging Artist Prize.
I sure have.
Yes, you have. What did that acknowledgement mean to you at this point in your career?
Oh my gosh, let's talk about it, because it was sort of, I want to talk about like how we got there, first of all.
Let's get it.
So I got a phone call one day from a number that did not have caller ID, and I usually don't pick up.
Boy, imagine if you hadn't picked up, eh?
Well, I hope they would have left a message.
Right.
But I picked up randomly, and they, sort of informed me of what was going to happen. And I didn't apply for this award. They sort of pick it from a committee. And I was like, oh, okay, that's amazing. Like, I'm so excited. And then I hung up and I went, there's no way that's real. Like that, there's no way. Because there's no way I just, like, won that. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And then, I started getting like an influx of like emails and sort of very official like things. And I went, oh, okay, so this is real. And yeah, it means everything. It means everything to me, but not just to me, to my whole community, not just Indigenous, but all of South River, to my family specifically. When I found out I was getting the award and then they were going to take me to Ottawa for the ceremony, I asked if I could bring my family members with, and I did. I brought my grandma, my dad, and my mom, and we all slept in one hotel room, which we didn't have to pay for, by the way. It was very fancy. And, we sort of bawled out while we were there. And we've never really done that before. My family's never been on vacation. We've never enjoyed the finer things in life. I mean, I've gotten to experience a lot of that as an opera singer, because that's sort of part of the job. But to have my family be there and be so taken care of, and to receive the award that I received, and it was such a beautiful award. And it was made by an Indigenous artist out of copper, and the copper is like super blue, and as it ages it will only become more blue from oxidization, so it's like a living piece of art, and it was made specifically for me. And to just be recognized in that way by the head of RBC and the NAC Council, and to be at the Governor General's Performing Arts Awards, and to meet the Governor General, who she's a pretty cool lady. So it was just like such an amazing night. And, also honored that night was actor Graham Greene, if you've ever heard of the guy. He's sort of famous Indigenous person. And my dad was sort of like freaking out a bit because he loves Graham Greene. And we were waiting in line for the bathrooms, and Graham Greene had a mohawk that night, and so did my dad. And Graham Greene comes out of the bathroom and he looks at my dad and he said, "Hey, nice hair." And I think that was like the best thing that's ever happened to my dad.
Wow.
Yeah.
The fact that, as you're talking about this accolade that you've received, that you spend so much time talking about your family, your community, this sort of unique way in which that you get this recognition, it's really telling also about your artistic approach, about this whole unit around you. The people that you have met, the people that you are about to meet in the sort of shared space of artistic practice, that's also just really, really telling about the kind of performer that you are. At the same time that you are being honored like this for your performances in a very sort of Eurocentric, usual artistic space, you're also one who is definitely out and trying to make that space better, as we've been talking about as well. The
For
words
sure.
"land back" are tattooed on your knuckles,
Literally
right there.
posing.
So, what, as your career continues to take off, what do you hope that looks like for you, and how do you hope that you will be able to make it one of a kind, just like that award that you received?
Oh, I think I'm sort of already like making it what I want because I'm sort of stubborn. I mean, I'm not like I'm a Pisces, you know, I'm a feeler.
Ah,
But I also think I take people with me on that feeling. And I personally am very strong about the things that I believe in, and I'm really driven by my responsibility. And I had an elder tell me when I was doing my degree in Indigenous Studies at Western that when you do something bad, your spirit knows. And when you do something good, your spirit knows. And when you know that something is wrong and needs to be righted, your spirit will tell you what to do. And what your responsibility is as an Indigenous person is to not ignore that feeling. And so there's been a lot of challenges in sort of navigating this very colonial world of classical music, where I get that feeling and I know I can't ignore it because it will not go away. And I have to say something.
yeah.
And that's my responsibility. And so personally, my journey will look like this. I'm going to keep singing. I'm going to keep doing roles. I'm going to keep creating art and enjoying things and enjoying the life that I've been given. And I'm going to keep not ignoring that voice.
Emma Pennell, this has been such an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to tell us more about your artistry and the work that you are doing throughout the industry to make it a better place.
Yes, sir.